My name is Aurora Stratton, and I'm 22 years old. If you walked into my life a year ago, you'd probably say I was lucky. I lived in a beautiful four-bedroom house in one of Denver's nicest neighborhoods. Big windows, quiet streets, yards that all looked like they'd been copy-pasted out of a real estate brochure. From the outside, it was the kind of place people pointed at and said, "Wow, whoever lives there must have it together." You wouldn't have seen the chore list taped to the fridge with my name on every line. You wouldn't have heard my stepbrother screaming into his gaming headset at 3 in the morning. And you definitely wouldn't have guessed that the person who made my life the hardest was the woman who married my father. The house wasn't just a house to me. It was the last piece of my mother that I still lived inside of. When I was 8, my mom died of breast cancer. One day she was brushing my hair before school, humming under her breath and reminding me not to forget my lunch. A few months later, I was standing in a hospital room staring at a body that looked like her but felt empty. I remember counting the tiles on the floor because looking at her face hurt too much. My father, Mark, shattered. There isn't really another word for it. The first year after she died, he moved through life like a ghost wearing his own clothes. He went to work. He signed papers. He attended meetings. But his eyes never really focused on anything for long. If it hadn't been for my grandparents, my mom's parents, I don't know what would have happened to us. They stepped in without hesitation. My grandma moved into our cramped apartment with her floral nightgowns and the smell of lavender lotion, and my grandpa started driving me to school every morning in his old sedan that rattled above 40 miles per hour. They made a decision pretty quickly. They bought us a house. Not some small place either. A bright, solid, comfortable home in a good neighborhood. A place where Aurora can grow up properly, Grandma said, smoothing my hair the way Mom used to. The plan was simple. We'd all live together, and they'd help raise me while Dad tried to remember how to live without the love of his life. For a while it worked. We had dinners at the long wooden table in the dining room. Grandma cooked, Dad washed dishes, Grandpa taught me how to make pancakes on Saturdays. There were family movie nights in the living room with the big windows, and on summer evenings, we'd sit on the back porch while Grandpa told stories about how he'd courted Grandma with cheap flowers and bad jokes. Back then, the house felt safe. It felt like a hug. And then Veronica arrived. Dad met her at a business conference in Chicago about 2 years after Mom died. He runs a consulting firm, and she was an event coordinator. At least that's the official version. The way he tells it, they just clicked. The way my grandparents told it, in hushed voices behind closed doors, they were pretty sure she'd smelled vulnerability and opportunity from 3 states away. She moved across the country for him after 3 months of knowing each other. 3 months. By 6 months, they were married. "Too fast," Grandma said one night when she thought I was asleep. I wasn't. I was standing in the hallway, staring at the shadow of their bedroom door. "I know," Grandpa replied, "but she's the first thing that's made him smile since everything. We can't take that away from him." The first time I met Veronica, she walked into our house like she was auditioning for a reality show. Perfectly styled hair, too tight dress, heels that clicked against the hardwood like a metronome. She looked around with this polite little smile that never reached her eyes. "It's cozy," she said, which was rich considering the house was bigger than anything she'd ever lived in. She brought 2 kids with her. Chase was 11 then, already a little tyrant in the making, and Autumn was 7, with big eyes and a shy smile that didn't last long. At first I tried. I was 12, awkward, and desperate not to be the problem in my dad's new chance at happiness. I shared my room with Autumn when she had nightmares. I let Chase hog the TV because he's still adjusting. My grandparents weren't fooled. I'd hear them at night in the kitchen, voices low. "I don't like how quickly she's rearranging things," Grandma would murmur. "Your mother's vase, the photo wall. It's like she wants to erase." "Let Mark have this," Grandpa would say, though he sounded tired. "We'll keep an eye on things, for Aurora." At first, Veronica's complaints were small. "The curtains are a little outdated. This carpet makes the house feel old. We should really modernize the kitchen. Marble countertops would add so much value." Then she started acting without asking. A framed photo of my mom disappeared from the hallway. My grandmother's knickknacks vanished from the living room shelves. When I asked where they were, Veronica smiled tightly and said, "I packed away some old clutter, sweetheart. We can't live in a museum forever, can we?" I remember telling my boyfriend Evan about it over lukewarm coffee on my break at Starbucks. We'd been dating for about a year at that point. He listened, eyes steady, fingers wrapped around his paper cup. "Does your dad know she's throwing that stuff out?" he asked. I shrugged. "He's just finally happy. I don't want to be the one to ruin it." Evan frowned. "You're not ruining anything by telling the truth, Aurora." I changed the subject. It was easier than admitting I was afraid he might be right. The chores started a little later. At first, it sounded fair. "Everyone should help around the house," Veronica said, with that bright, reasonable tone that made people nod along before their brains caught up. Except everyone quickly turned into Aurora. Chase was always too busy with sports and needed to focus. Autumn was still a child, even though she was only a year younger than me. By 12, I was doing most of the cooking and cleaning. By 15, I knew how to remove wine stains from the couch I wasn't allowed to sit on. By 19, I could guess the exact moment Veronica would swipe her finger over a baseboard to check for dust. Meanwhile, Chase's room smelled like gym socks and Axe body spray, and Autumn's floor had never met a laundry basket. Veronica never said a word to them. Only to me. "Aurora, the dishwasher isn't loaded efficiently." "Aurora, there's streaks on the bathroom mirror." "Aurora, if you're going to live here, you need to act like part of the family." Part of the family, as long as that part involved free labor. I told myself it was temporary, that once I finished my online classes, once I'd saved enough from my Starbucks shifts, once Dad was a little more stable, I'd move out. That it wasn't worth starting a war over chores and passive-aggressive comments. But the house started to feel less like a hug and more like a trap. And then, one evening, everything shifted. I'd just gotten home from an 8-hour shift. My feet ached, my hair smelled like espresso, and some woman had screamed at me that morning because we were out of almond milk. All I wanted was a shower and silence. Instead, I walked into the kitchen to find Veronica sitting at the island in one of her designer dresses, scrolling on her phone with that tight, controlled look on her face. She watched me stir the spaghetti sauce in silence for a minute. The overhead lights hummed softly. Somewhere upstairs, Chase yelled something about his kill-death ratio in whatever game he was obsessed with. "Aurora," Veronica said finally, folding her hands on the counter, "we need to have a serious conversation about your living situation." The sauce bubbled. My stomach did too. I didn't know it yet, but that sentence was the match. And the house I thought had already burned me was about to go up in flames. If you've ever had someone start a conversation with, "We need to talk about your living situation," you know nothing good comes after. I kept stirring the sauce, pretending my heart hadn't just started thudding in my ears. "My living situation?" I said, without turning around. "I've literally lived here longer than you, Veronica." She gave this soft, fake laugh. "Don't be dramatic, Aurora. I just mean, you're an adult now. You're working. Your father and I have been talking, and we think it's time you started contributing." There it was, contributing. I shut off the burner so the sauce didn't burn, set the spoon down, and finally turned to face her. She had her elbows on the island, chin tilted, as if she were a manager about to give a performance review. "What does contributing mean?" I asked. Her smile tightened. "Rent." The word dropped between us like a stone. "You want me to pay rent," I repeated, just to make sure I wasn't hallucinating after 8 hours of handling espresso shots and entitled customers. "Yes," she said, folding her hands. "You're working part-time, taking online classes. It's not fair for you to live here for free while we cover all the expenses. We're not running a charity." I actually had to bite back a laugh at that. From upstairs, Chase yelled at someone through his headset. Something about his KD ratio being ruined by noobs. Autumn's TikTok audio drifted from the living room, her voice occasionally blending in as she recorded yet another day in my life vlog where she did absolutely nothing. "What about Chase and Autumn?" I asked, keeping my voice even. "Are they paying rent too?" Veronica reached for a cloth napkin and dabbed at the corner of her perfectly glossed mouth, even though she hadn't eaten anything. It was one of her little power moves, subtle, rehearsed. "Well, that's different," she said. "Is it?" I tilted my head. "They're still finding themselves," she continued. "Chase is focusing on his content creation career, and Autumn is busy with her business program. They need support right now." I stared at her. Content creation career, right? The career involving dancing badly on TikTok and screaming at 12-year-olds on Xbox for maybe 3 viewers, one of which was probably Veronica on an alt account. "And I'm not finding myself?" I asked quietly. "I'm working, taking classes, and doing most of the housework." "Aurora, nobody's denying you help out," Veronica said, using the tone people usually reserve for overexcited toddlers. "But you're more established. You have steady income. It's time you contribute like an adult." "How much?" I asked. She perked up, as if we were finally getting to the part she'd rehearsed in the mirror. "We think $600 a month, plus your portion of utilities is reasonable," she said. "And of course, you'll still help around the house. That's just part of being family." Just part of being family. Something inside my chest twisted. I thought of my grandma stirring soup at the stove, of my grandpa fixing a loose cabinet door, of my father. Before his eyes went dull, nobody had ever once mentioned a dollar sign when they said the word family. "That's a lot," I said slowly, "for someone working part-time at Starbucks and paying for online classes." Veronica shrugged. "Life is expensive. You'll have to learn that sooner or later. Besides, if you don't like it, you can always look into student housing. Out-of-state colleges have dorms, don't they?" There it was again. That hint, that little glint in her eye, whenever the idea of me moving out came up. At the time, I just filed it away as cruelty disguised as tough love. I didn't know then how far she'd take that idea. I stood there in the kitchen, sauce cooling on the stove, trying to process the fact that my stepmother, the woman who had treated me like unpaid staff for years, was now asking me to pay rent to live in the one place my grandparents had built, so I would never have to worry about a roof over my head. And here's the part that still makes my vision go white when I think about it. I didn't know it yet, but this house was already mine. Literally, legally, in my name. Grandma died in 2019 from heart complications. Grandpa followed 3 months later. He'd always said he couldn't imagine life without her. Apparently, his heart agreed. After their funeral, everything blurred. There were casseroles in the fridge from neighbors I barely knew. Thick envelopes full of paperwork. My father moving slower than usual, like he'd aged 10 years overnight. Somewhere in that haze, my grandparents had made a decision I wouldn't learn about until much later. They transferred the deed of the house into my name. They'd seen the way Veronica watched the house, the way she walked through each room like she was calculating how much she could get for it. They'd heard the late-night comments about equity and investments, and how we could really upgrade if we sold this place. They hadn't confronted her. They hadn't fought with my father. They'd gone to a lawyer, signed papers, protected me the only way they knew how. My father knew. He just didn't think to mention it. "Your grandparents wanted you to have security," he'd told me quietly months after I found out, staring at his hands instead of my face. "I didn't want to stress you out while you were studying. I figured we'd talk about it. Later." Later. As if there was ever going to be a good time to tell your daughter, "By the way, the house you've been scrubbing from top to bottom for years actually belongs to you, not the woman who keeps threatening to modernize you out of your own memories." I didn't find out because he sat me down. I found out because one afternoon, while looking for an old binder in his home office, I opened the wrong drawer and found the deed. My name, in black ink. My stomach had dropped so hard I'd had to sit down. The lawyer he'd used confirmed everything when I called, voice shaking. Yes, the house was legally mine. Yes, Veronica had no claim on it. No, she didn't even know. I remember hanging up the phone and just sitting on the floor of my room, staring at the wall, hearing Veronica's voice in my head. "If you're going to live here, you need to act like part of the family." In that moment, something fundamental shifted. All those years of biting my tongue, trying not to cause trouble, telling myself I just needed to survive until I could move out, suddenly felt like a cruel joke. I'd been living like Cinderella in a house where I was the legal owner. So back in the kitchen, with Veronica's rent plan hanging in the air, I wasn't just angry. I was done. $600, I repeated slowly, plus utilities, and I still do the majority of the housework? "Don't be so negative," Veronica said. "Think of it as preparation for the real world. You should be grateful you have a place like this to live at all." Grateful. I thought of my grandparents, my grandma's soft hands, my grandpa's terrible jokes, the way they'd leaned on each other in photos that now sat in boxes because Veronica said the frames clashed with her aesthetic. I thought of the signature on that deed. My hand felt weirdly steady as I picked the spoon back up and turned to the stove, turning the burner back on. "Okay," I said quietly. Veronica blinked. Clearly she'd expected a fight or tears. "Not that." "Okay," she repeated. "Okay," I said again, stirring the sauce. "If you want to talk about rent, we'll talk about rent, but not like this." "What do you mean?" Her voice sharpened slightly. I didn't answer right away. I listened to the bubbling sauce, the faint, muffled sound of Chase yelling upstairs, the TikTok audio looping in the living room. My life, contained in noise. "I think," I said finally, turning to look her straight in the eye, That if we're going to discuss something as important as my living situation, we should do it as a family, all of us, Dad included. Her jaw tensed. There's no need to drag everyone into this, she said. Your father's busy. I'm sure he'd agree with. You like family meetings? I cut in gently. You've said that 1,000,000 times. We should handle things as a family, so let's do that. Her eyes flashed, but she forced another smile. Fine, she said. We'll talk at dinner. Perfect, I said. I finished the spaghetti, plated everything, and called Chase and Autumn down. Veronica busied herself setting the table, acting like this was any other night. But as I laid out the plates, my phone buzzed in my back pocket. I pulled it out and stared at the screen for a long second. Dad. I typed out a single text. We need to talk about the house. Tonight, on speaker. As I hit send, I felt it again. That same sharp, cold clarity from the day I'd found the deed. I wasn't just going to survive this conversation. I was going to end it. By the time everyone dragged themselves into the dining room, the spaghetti had already cooled. Not that anyone noticed. The air felt thick enough to chew. Chase stomped down the stairs like he was being forced into manual labor, muttering something about ruining his stream schedule. Autumn floated in after him, already holding her phone at a flattering angle, her lip gloss catching the chandelier light as she checked her reflection in the black camera screen. Veronica moved around the table with this jittery elegance, smoothing placemats, adjusting forks, pretending everything was normal, even though her eyes kept darting toward me like she was waiting for an ambush. She wasn't wrong. When everyone finally sat, she cleared her throat and angled her shoulders like a politician preparing a press conference. So, Veronica began brightly, folding her hands, we're here to talk about something important. As you all know, running a household costs money. God, here we go, Chase groaned, shoveling spaghetti into his mouth. And your father and I feel it's only fair that Aurora begins contributing as an adult. Autumn nodded sympathetically, even though she had no idea what was happening. Yeah, Aurora. Like, responsibility is good for character. I stared at her. This was a girl who once cried because her phone battery died and she had to eat breakfast without taking a picture of it first. Veronica continued, full of confidence now that she had an audience. We've decided that beginning next month, Aurora will pay $600 in rent and her share of utilities. This is a very reasonable arrangement, considering she didn't get to finish. I quietly set down my fork, folded my hands, just like she had done, and asked, And Chase and Autumn, what are they contributing? Chase snorted. I'm building a brand. A losing one, I said before I could stop myself. Autumn gasped as if I'd slapped her. Veronica's smile stiffened. This isn't about them, Aurora. They're still focusing on their future. You, on the other hand, have been doing everyone's laundry for a decade, I said, including Chase's dirty gym clothes. Chase rolled his eyes, mouth full. You didn't have to. Actually, I said, voice calm, Veronica told me I did. Veronica shot up a little straighter, color rising in her cheeks. Let's stay on topic. Great idea, I said softly. Let's talk about the house. A flicker of something, fear, passed through her eyes. Behind me, my phone buzzed on the table. Dad had seen my text. I slid it closer to Veronica. Call him, I said. Put him on speaker. I think you should clarify a few things. She hesitated, hands hovering over her phone. Why would we bother your father? She asked. He trusts me to handle things here. Call him, I repeated. Chase smirked. This gonna be good. With a sharp breath, Veronica dialed. Each ring felt like the tick of a bomb. Ring, ring, ring. Finally. Hello? Dad sounded tired, always tired these days. Mark, Veronica said, her voice suddenly dripping with honey. Aurora is telling some very strange stories about this house. She claims it belongs to her. That can't be true, right? The silence that followed stretched long and thin. Dad inhaled shakily. Well, actually, Autumn froze mid-recording. Chase's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. Even the air seemed to pause. Dad continued, voice small. The house. It is in Aurora's name. Your in-laws transferred it before they passed. I meant to tell you, but I didn't think it was important. Veronica's face drained of color so quickly it had to be medically concerning. She looked like someone had unplugged her soul. What do you mean, not important? She whispered. Dad kept talking, but she wasn't listening anymore. Her breath came shallow, her hands trembled. Aurora Stratton, owner of the house. I could almost hear the gears in her mind grinding, every entitled assumption she'd ever made hitting a brick wall of reality. Finally, she snapped back into her body. Mark, she hissed. We will discuss this later. She stabbed the screen to end the call. Silence. Then, Chase burst out laughing. Oh my God, he cackled. She actually thought, oh, shut up, Veronica snapped, slamming her hand against the table. The plates rattled. Autumn jumped. Then, forcing a smile so tight it looked painful, she turned to me. There's clearly been a misunderstanding, she said, voice trembling. Of course you don't have to pay rent. Let's just pretend this conversation never happened. I leaned back in my chair, letting the moment breathe, savoring the panic radiating off them like heat. Oh no, I said softly. We're absolutely not forgetting this conversation. Her smile cracked. In fact, I continued, now that we know who actually owns this house, I think we should talk about your living situation. Across the table, Veronica's face went cold and still, like she'd just seen the edge of the cliff she'd been dancing on for years. But it wasn't fear that hit her next. It was anger. Real, deep, blistering anger. You listen to me, she whispered, voice shaking with fury. I don't care whose name is on the deed. This is my home. I've run this household for 12 years. You are not going to undermine me in my own... Your own what? I interrupted. Your own house? Because it isn't. Her jaw clenched so tight I could see the tension all the way from my seat. This behavior is unacceptable, she spat. Your father and I won't tolerate... I'm done tolerating, I said calmly. And something in my tone must have hit her, because she flinched. A small, sharp movement. The kind people make when they realize the rules of the game have changed, and they're suddenly losing. Chase swallowed loudly. Autumn lowered her phone. I stood and collected my plate, taking my time, letting the silence expand until it became a living thing. As I walked toward the sink, I said without looking back, tomorrow morning, we'll continue this conversation, and trust me, tonight is the last time things will ever be the same in this house. Behind me, chairs scraped. Veronica sputtered. Chase cursed. Autumn whispered something I couldn't hear. But none of it mattered. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't shaking. I wasn't scared. I wasn't hoping to avoid her wrath. For the first time, the house felt like mine. And I intended to make sure everyone else understood that too. I barely slept that night. Not because I was anxious, because my mind was clear. For the first time in years, I felt something dangerous and unfamiliar rising through me. Power, calm, a resolve I didn't know I had. By morning, the house was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that comes just before a storm. As I stepped toward the kitchen, I heard voices, low, sharp, frantic. Veronica's voice, strained and panicked, bouncing off the tile. And Dad's, tired and cracking around the edges. I froze just beyond the doorway. Veronica never used speakerphone unless she wanted an audience. She wanted control through volume, through witnesses, through public pressure. So she obviously didn't know I was standing right there. Mark, she hissed, you have to do something. Your daughter is out of control. My father sighed. The sigh of a man who'd been exhausted for years. Veronica, what do you want me to do? Send her to college, out of state. Her voice sharpened. She applied to several, didn't she? Convince her to go. She needs independence. Space. Time away from us. Time away from us. As if I were the disruptor. As if I were the problem. Dad's voice wavered. I don't think... Think about it, Veronica pressed, switching to that syrupy tone she used when she wanted something. She's clearly unstable. All this anger, all this entitlement, it's not healthy. She needs a fresh start. It'll be better for everyone. Every word was a knife dipped in honey. And then I heard it. The sentence that almost broke me. Maybe you're right, Dad murmured. I'll talk to her. Maybe she should move. My breath punched out of my chest so hard I almost made a sound. My father, was going to help her remove me from a home that legally belonged to me. The home my grandparents built to protect me. I pressed a hand to my mouth to keep from screaming. But then, a different feeling overrode the heartbreak. Cold, deliberate clarity. If they wanted to play chess, I could play chess. I pulled out my phone, hit record, captured every word. Veronica's manipulation, her fake concern, Dad's defeated agreement. When I finally walked into the kitchen, Veronica nearly dropped her mug. Aurora, she chirped, tone flipping instantly. Good morning, sweetie. I made coffee. No, she had not made coffee. She'd put a K-cup in the Keurig that I bought with my Starbucks paycheck. Chase wandered in behind me, looking like a zombie from staying up all night, streaming to his 3 loyal viewers. Autumn swept in after him, hair curled, lashes fluttering, lip gloss perfect. She'd spent 2 hours getting ready to do absolutely nothing. We all sat. The tension was a physical thing, thick enough to choke on. I didn't speak, not yet. Let them stew. Veronica tried to make small talk. Autumn pretended her avocado toast was fascinating. Chase scrolled TikTok while chewing with his mouth open. Finally, I lifted my gaze to Veronica. Hey, Veronica, I said, voice calm. I've been thinking about what you said yesterday, about rent. She perked up like someone had plugged her into a power source. Yes, sweetheart, she said too quickly. I think you're right, I continued. People who live here should pay rent. Her relief lasted exactly 2 seconds, because then I smiled. I did some calculations. Based on market rates in this neighborhood, I think $200 per person is fair. That's $3,600 total for you, Chase, and Autumn, plus utilities and a security deposit. Chase choked, literally choked, on his cereal. Autumn dropped her avocado toast face down onto her white crop top and gasped as if she'd been shot. Veronica's chair scraped violently across the floor as she shot to her feet. You can't be serious, she sputtered. We're family. Exactly, I said softly. And as you've always told me, family helps family. Chase slammed his cereal bowl down. I'm not paying rent. I'm building a brand. You're building a headache, I muttered. Autumn's voice cracked. Daddy won't let you do this. He loves us. I raised a brow. Then he'll be happy to hear the recording. Their noise died instantly. What recording? Veronica whispered. I tapped my phone screen. The audio file waited there like a loaded weapon. I pressed play. Her own voice filled the kitchen, echoing around us. Mark, you need to convince Aurora to go to an out-of-state college. She's unstable. She needs to leave this house. And then Dad's voice. Maybe you're right. I'll talk to her. When the clip ended, the silence was suffocating. Veronica's face went through every stage of emotional collapse. Shock, denial, fury, fear. You recorded me? She hissed. That's illegal. We live in a one-party consent state, I replied. I checked. Her nostrils flared. You ungrateful little... Careful, I said quietly. Every word you say right now is being recorded too. Chase's mouth hung open. Milk dripped down his chin. Autumn looked like she was trying to telepathically delete the entire morning. Veronica grabbed her phone with shaking hands and dialed my father again, stabbing the screen. He answered on the third ring. What now? He sighed. She's extorting us, Veronica shrieked. You need to come home and deal with your daughter. But this time, Dad didn't crumble. His voice hardened, just a little. Veronica, it's her house. We need to respect that. The silence that followed was so complete it was almost holy. Veronica looked like someone had pulled the ground out from under her. Chase blinked rapidly, processing the idea that he might soon have to do actual adult tasks like working. Autumn's eyes glassed over like she was about to cry over losing natural lighting for her selfies. Veronica hung up the phone with a trembling hand. She turned to me, voice low and venomous. Listen here, Aurora. I don't care whose name is on the deed. I'm not leaving. This is my home. Do you understand me? I will make your life a living hell before... Click. I tapped my phone's recording button again. Her threat became evidence. She froze. I smiled, sweet and calm. My lawyer will love that. Veronica blanched, stepping back as though the words themselves had shoved her. Chase looked horrified. Autumn actually whimpered. I stood up, placing my napkin neatly on the table. You tried to get rid of me, I said. Now I'm returning the favor, except I'm doing it legally. I walked toward the hallway, paused at the threshold, and turned back just long enough to say, check your mail tomorrow. Then I left the kitchen behind, my heart steady, my mind razor sharp. Because I already knew what tomorrow would bring. Eviction notices. Real ones. And the start of a war they were never equipped to win. The next morning, the house felt like it was holding its breath. I woke up earlier than usual. Not because I was nervous, but because I finally felt free. The kind of free that comes right before a storm breaks in your favor. I dressed calmly, made myself coffee the way I like it, dark roast, a little vanilla creamer, none of Veronica's watery diet nonsense, and headed downstairs. Veronica was already in the kitchen. She was pacing, her silk robe swishing around her legs, hair frizzing at the ends from a night of rage and zero sleep. Her precious World's Best Mom mug sat on the counter, untouched. Her phone was in her hand, the screen lit up with a list of phone numbers. Lawyers, from the look of it. Her eyes snapped toward me. You think you're clever, she said, her voice brittle. But Mark and I are talking to a lawyer. You can't just throw us out of our home. I took a sip of my coffee, savoring it. It's my home, I reminded her gently. Her nostrils flared so hard it looked painful. Semantics. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. My silence was gasoline on her fire. Just then, there was a loud knock at the door. Veronica flinched. Chase stumbled in from the hallway, shirtless, hair wild, rubbing sleep crust from his eyes. Who the hell knocks like that at... He checked the microwave clock. 9 a.m.? Autumn trailed behind him, wearing pajama shorts and a cropped sweatshirt, full makeup already applied, because God forbid she be emotionally unstable and barefaced at the same time. I set my mug on the table. "Oh," I said lightly, "that must be for you." Chase frowned. "For who?" "You," I said, "and Veronica, and Autumn." I opened the door. A man in uniform, stoic, professional, stood on the porch holding a stack of envelopes. "Eviction notices for the residents at this address," he said. Veronica's skin drained of color as he handed them over. "This must be some kind of mistake," she sputtered. "You can't deliver these here. This house belongs to—" "Her," the officer said, nodding toward me. He didn't even hesitate. I almost felt bad. Almost. The officer left, the door shut, and for 10 long seconds no one spoke. Then, chaos. "What the hell?" Chase yelled, tearing open his envelope. "You can't make me leave. I don't have anywhere to go. My setup is here." "Oh, sweetheart," I said gently. "Your setup is portable. That's what a room temperature IQ gets you." Autumn gasped, horrified. "My sorority sisters will never let me live with them again," she cried. "They said I was too dramatic." "They were right," I muttered. She burst into tears. Veronica was last to open her envelope. She scanned the document, her hands trembling so violently the pages rustled like leaves in a storm. Her voice cracked. This is illegal. I'm calling my cousin. He's a lawyer." "The DUI specialist?" I asked sweetly. "Does he also handle cases of entitled stepmother tries to evict legal homeowner from her own property?" Veronica let out a sound somewhere between a shriek and a gasp. "This is our home," she insisted. "We've lived here for 12 years. That must count for something." "It does," I said. "It counts as 12 years of free rent I shouldn't have let slide." Her mouth fell open. "You little monster." "Smile," I said. "I'm recording." She snapped her jaw shut, because she finally understood something. Every threat she made only strengthened my case. But she wasn't done fighting. Oh no. She spiraled. First, she spent the entire morning calling every law firm in the county, slamming the pantry door over and over as if yelling into it would make the answers change. But lawyers talk, and apparently the story of a stepmother who tried to force the legal owner out of her own house was too pathetic for even the most desperate attorney to touch. One by one, they turned her down. Even her cousin refused. Then she turned to Facebook, the battlefield of the middle-aged and delusional. She posted a dramatic 800-word rant titled, "Please pray for my family." Within an hour, comments started rolling in. People she thought were her friends offered sympathy, until my mom's old friend Claire commented, "This is the same woman who made Aurora do all the housework for years while her own kids did nothing. I have screenshots." The comment section exploded. Veronica deleted the post, then reposted it, then deleted it again. Then posted a long paragraph about cyberbullying by jealous people. It got 2 likes, both from MLM friends trying to recruit her. The real breaking point came that afternoon. I'd installed security cameras in the common areas after serving the eviction notices, just in case things got ugly. Good thing I did, because at 2:43 p.m., my phone buzzed with a motion alert. I checked the feed, and there she was, Veronica, sneaking into my mother's keepsake cabinet, opening a velvet-lined jewelry box, stuffing my mother's vintage necklaces and rings into her cheap Michael Kors purse. I didn't even hesitate. I drove home faster than I should have, walked through the door, and found her standing there, mid-theft. "Aurora, this isn't what it looks like," she stammered. "It looks like you're stealing from me," I said. "From my mother." Her face twisted. "I was protecting the jewelry. I didn't want anything to happen to it while we figure things out." "Yes," I said calmly. "You protected it directly into your purse." Her lips thinned. "You're imagining things." I held up my phone. "Smile," I said. "You're on camera." Her eyes widened, truly frightened for the first time. I called the police. When the officer, a middle-aged woman who looked utterly done with humanity, arrived, Veronica launched into tears. Hysterical sobs, trembling hands, claims of misunderstanding. But when the officer reviewed the security footage, her face hardened. "Ma'am," she said, "attempting to remove property from the legal owner without permission is not a family disagreement. It's a crime." Veronica's mascara didn't even run. Waterproof. Tragic choice for a dramatic scene. After the police left with a written report in hand, Veronica crumpled onto the couch, defeated. Her voice was a thin whisper. "What are you going to do to us, Aurora?" For the first time, I looked at her without fear, without resentment. Just clarity. "I'm going to do what you tried to do to me," I said softly. "I'm going to make you leave." She inhaled sharply, like the words themselves had knocked the air out of her. And then, as if punctured by reality, she sank deeper into the cushions and covered her face with her hands. For the next 2 days, she didn't come out of her room except to microwave food and make tearful phone calls. Chase raged. Autumn cried. Dad apologized through text messages he didn't know how to make right. And me, I slept better than I had in years. Because the moment Veronica tried to steal from me, she proved she had never been family. And she made the final choice for me. She chose to go to war, and I was done fighting fair. The day before their eviction deadline, Veronica called a family meeting. I almost laughed when she said it, because suddenly she wanted to sit down and talk like adults, but I agreed, mostly because I was curious which version of herself she would bring. The crying victim, the raging tyrant, or the melodramatic martyr. Turned out she chose door number 3. She swept into the living room, wearing a fake Chanel suit, pattern slightly crooked, threads already fraying. Her hair was curled, her makeup flawless, her expression composed in that brittle way someone looks when they rehearse a speech in the mirror. All morning, Chase and Autumn sat on the couch looking like 2 kids awaiting sentencing. Chase's knee bounced. Autumn's mascara was clumped from crying over God knows what, probably the lighting situation at her aunt's house. Veronica placed herself in the armchair like a dethroned queen reclaiming her seat. "Aurora," she began, voice quivering just enough to sound meaningful. "After much reflection, your father and I have decided to move to Florida." I blinked. Of all the dramatic lies she could have chosen, that one was almost funny. "We found a beautiful house in Tampa," she continued, chin lifting. "Much nicer than this old place. Sunny, spacious, far from all of this." She waved vaguely at the air, as though gesturing at the entire storm she had created. I folded my arms. "Oh? And who's paying for this house?" Veronica's smile tightened. "We have resources." Interesting word choice. Especially since I'd already seen her failed GoFundMe titled "Family in Crisis Needs Housing Support." It had collected a staggering $43, mostly from 2 MLM friends and 1 confused relative. "Where's Dad?" I asked. She froze. "He's getting things settled." Translation: he wasn't here because he didn't want to witness the performance. He'd been staying at a hotel for days, claiming he needed space to think. Translation: he didn't want to choose sides where he could see the fallout. "So," Veronica continued, regaining her forced composure, "I hope you're satisfied. Your tantrum has broken this family apart." Chase sighed loudly. "This sucks, Aurora. I was finally gaining followers." "You had 203, I said. "Yeah," he said proudly, growing fast. Autumn sniffled. "I can't believe you're doing this. I have midterms." "You don't attend your classes," I reminded her. "I audit them," she snapped. "You watch TikToks during them," I corrected. Her lip quivered. I didn't apologize. Right then, as if the universe had perfect comedic timing, a loud knock echoed from the front door. 3 enormous men in matching shirts stepped inside, carrying boxes and metal dollies. The head mover, Mike, according to his name tag, consulted his clipboard. "Ma'am," he said politely to Veronica, "we're here to pack and move the belongings listed under the Stratton eviction order." Veronica's jaw unhinged. "What now? You can't. Someone needs to call someone." Mike nodded sympathetically. "We're on a tight schedule. Everything goes to the storage unit you paid for online." Chase looked horrified. "My gaming chair." "We'll handle it with care," Mike said. "No," Chase yelped. "I don't want anyone touching her." "Her?" I repeated. "That chair has supported me through difficult times," Chase insisted. Autumn burst into tears again. "You guys don't understand anything." I sat on the couch, sipping iced coffee like this was a live show. Veronica flew across the room, grabbing random objects. "This vase is a family heirloom," she cried. "It's from Home Goods," I said. "You left the sticker on." She clutched another item. "This bowl! My grandmother made this." "That's my mother's ceramic bowl," I said. "You tried to throw it away last year." Her hand froze midair. Mike gently removed it from her grip. "This is listed under Miss Stratton's property," he said. Veronica let out an inhuman sound, somewhere between a scream, a sob, and a dramatic soap opera gasp. While they packed, I walked through the house, watching as 12 years of screaming manipulation and slow emotional decay were boxed up and pushed out the front door. Chase's piles of tangled cables, Autumn's makeup drawers stuffed with unopened PR packages she claimed to be sponsored for. Veronica's fake designer clothing, which looked even cheaper under natural light. It was strange. I thought I would feel triumphant. But mostly I felt quiet, clear, like the air in the house could breathe again. By the time the movers left, Veronica was standing in the middle of the empty living room, hands shaking, makeup smudged from the sheer emotional whiplash. She turned to me slowly. This isn't over, she said, voice trembling. I will rebuild. I will come back stronger. You're not a phoenix, I replied. You're a Karen in a clearance blazer. Chase let out a strangled noise that might have been a laugh. Veronica snapped toward him, but he shut up immediately. Where are we even supposed to go? Autumn asked weakly. You can ask your aunt, I said. Veronica's eyes flashed. We don't want to live there. It's cramped. And she has cats. Seems like a you problem, I said. Veronica opened her mouth to unleash one final insult, but then her phone buzzed. It was Dad. She stared at the screen for a long, long moment. Then, without a word, she walked past me, out the door, and down the driveway, where a car waited. She didn't slam the door. She didn't scream. She just left. The house exhaled. The fallout was swift and almost poetic. Chase. He ended up selling his entire gaming setup, his beloved her, to cover a deposit for a room in a questionable shared house. He now works at GameStop, which ironically might be the hardest he's worked in his life. Autumn spent 1 week living with her sorority sisters before they kicked her out for crying too loudly about losing her brand. Now she commutes 2 hours from her aunt's place. Dad. Still with Veronica, still exhausted. He stops by occasionally, hovering in the doorway like a ghost, unsure of how to talk to me. I don't hate him, but I don't trust him either. That's something he'll have to earn back. Veronica, rumor has it, she tried to join a new social circle, but her Facebook meltdown made her radioactive. Apparently, stealing jewelry from your stepdaughter before an eviction is a deal breaker at country clubs. Shocking. As for me, the house is quiet now, beautifully, achingly quiet. I turned Chase's old room into my home office, Autumn's into the closet of my dreams. Veronica's meditation room, which she only used to watch reality TV, is now a bright yoga space. Sometimes I walk through the halls and swear I can feel my grandparents here. Not in a spooky way, more like a memory breathing beside me. And I'm not alone. My mom's best friend, Claire, has moved into the spare room. She's warm, funny, gentle. She teaches me my mom's old recipes, tells me stories I never heard, fills the house with something soft and familiar. For the first time in years, I feel safe. Evan, my boyfriend, comes by on weekends. He stands on the porch and tells me I look lighter, like I'm finally living in my own skin. He doesn't try to take credit. He just holds space for the life I'm building. Sometimes, late at night, I sit in the living room with the lights off and listen to the quiet. It doesn't feel empty. It feels like a beginning. Was I harsh? Maybe. Do I regret it? Not for a single second. Some people think karma is slow, but sometimes karma wears a silk robe, threatens the wrong daughter, and gets served eviction papers before lunchtime.